We can go live. Let's please stand. Good morning. Let's please stand for a moment of silent meditation and the pledge. And please keep in your thoughts and prayers Mr. Bloom from the Leitersburg Volunteer Fire Company, who passed away earlier this week. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call our meeting to order. We begin with the approval of the meeting minutes of January the 11th. I think, Mr. Burke, were you here on that meeting?
No.
So
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next agenda item, we'll begin with Commissioner reports. Commissioner Baker, Vice President Baker, would you begin?
Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for mentioning Mr. Bloom for prayers, and prayers do go out to Mr. Bloom's family and all of the fire departments that he's helped over the years. So he'll be greatly missed, and he was a great guy. And I know I'm going to miss him when I go out. I used to have long conversations with him, so let's keep his family in our prayers and thoughts for a long time. Also, I've had some calls on the tax assessments on some of the properties here in the county. Some of them's going up 25, 30%. And I know a couple of the property owners that I talked to are very concerned about how much their tax bill is going to be going up. And 30% is a big jump. Yes. So maybe staff could come back and give us a refresher course or just freshen our memories on the tax cap. You know, I think there's taxes can only go up a certain percentage.
Yeah, it only goes up a certain percentage, and it's over a 3-year period, I believe.
Okay.
And there is an appeal process that they can appeal.
Is that the homestead tax credit, right? And that's what one of them's called.
It's only allowed. Yeah, but we can, yes, that's what it is. Yeah.
So you know, I think it'd be good for us to hear what's can and can't be done, or you know, will be done with their tax increases over time in the tax cap. I know I need to be freshened up about it.
Okay.
I was here, I can remember when I first took office, we had the big, there was money everywhere with taxes going up, everybody's assessments going up, and then it plummeted. So we just have to be a little careful on what we do. We don't want to get 3-4 years down the road, and if you lower property taxes and they get too low, and then you have to come back and raise them. We just need to make sure that we can manage our money for 4 to 6, 8 years.
You want to make sure those who are eligible can apply for those credits.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
we can have staff come in, but you know, obviously that's the assessment process is a state process. It's handled entirely by the state, and again, they look at a third of the county, and Kelsey and Kirk can correct me, they look at a third of the county, so every 3 years they look at each property. And then when they decide, when it is going to go up, when they determine it needs to go up, it's phased in over, I think, a 3-year period. I believe that's what it is.
I think that's correct. And I think there's also a ceiling as to how much it can go up at any time.
Right. So we can get those,
I just think it'd be good for all of us to hear that. Also, so having those discussions spurred some other ideas in my mind this week. And I know we're going to be doing the budget here soon. We're going to be talking about surplus and so forth. And I hope we're all kind of still going to be looking at possibly reducing the income tax rate to 2.8%. I think, and this is just me speaking, that would be good for me. And along with a lot of the surplus and some of the extra money that we're enjoying now, we could, and these are just my ideas, possibly pay down some of the debt, could probably have maybe a decrease in borrowing this year. And I would really hope the commissioners take a look at the funding for the volunteer companies in Washington County. We started out at a $45,000 funding rate, and I don't think they've ever really had an increase. So it would be nice to see them get $70,000, in my opinion, or even more if we can afford it. At least get them some help out there for all of the great work that they do for our citizens, and they save us millions and millions of dollars. So, they were my thoughts there. So maybe staff could put together some ideas and thoughts for us, and the commissioners can put together, discuss their thoughts and so forth, and come up with some great ideas. And then the other thing that I was thinking about was I remember there was some conversation with Congressman Trone. He was talking about possibly finding some funding for 911 emergency services in the counties across the state, or across these, at least the last state. And I think he was concerned about us not having to use our ARPA money to fund some of that stuff, and he could possibly help us find some additional funding. So maybe there's something staff would know that they could bring some information back to us.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. I would just tell you, obviously, we're going to have some additional discussions about American Rescue Plan funding today. And one of the things that we looked at was using those funds, using reserves, and using other funding mechanisms to try to spread those dollars as far as we could. Instead of just, I mean, some sort of, I don't want to say it's easy because it's not, but just to throw Arpa funds at it, I think there are other funding, and I think that's what you're saying. There are might be some other funding opportunities for us to do more projects. So staff is looking at those. And I'll just say that, staff has looked at some of those numbers, and Kelsey and her staff will look at some of those numbers about income tax. I will tell you that the CIP committee has been meeting, and there, at least our preliminary discussions, there are more projects than there is funding. So CIP committee has been talking about, having to reduce and remove and push out some of those projects. So it's just something to keep in mind, and we'll be having those discussions in the next, I'm not sure when the CIP comes in, but. So those initial discussions will be, here's the projects that we received, here's what the CIP committee is recommending. So those are things that we're looking at, so.
I just think it's important that we utilize all funding opportunities.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Several months ago, we met with Congressman Trone in the city. He wanted a list of our projects so he could maybe just show or guide us to where other funding mechanisms were. Is that correct?
Right, and we've had a number of discussions with Congressman Trone's office about projects and things that they could do, and they're going to do earmarks again this year, which they haven't done in a long time. They did them right at the end of last year, and we were attempting to get into those, and there's going to be some of those this year. So, we're looking at those, and
Okay.
so I just think staff is, and all staff, whether departments, are all looking at alternative funding methods. So there's money out there, and we have to try to find it. So that's what we're doing. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Commissioner Burkett?
Good morning, everyone. Last week, with session being in Annapolis, my meetings with MACO have increased, and last week I attended 3 separate meetings and was appointed to serve on the tax subcommittee. We addressed 26 bills that we voted to take a stance on, and if any of the commissioners are interested in any of those stances that we took, I would be more than willing or happy to sit and talk with you about them. Also, if you have a concern about any of the bills that are coming up and you want me to take that to MACO leadership, I can do that. One positive that came out of those meetings last week was it sounds like Governor Hogan's going to put $550 million back in his budget this year for highways, and so that's a positive. It's not a permanent thing to get us back to where we were in 2009, but it's a positive step in that direction.
Charlie, when they talk about $500 million, did they talk about the possible percentage or a dollar amount coming back to specific counties?
What I'm hearing is that they want to restore, like, Washington County's level back to what it was 2008 or something.
That's what they're working towards.
At one time, we were at 9 million, I think, was our peak.
That's correct.
It'd be nice to get that money back.
'Cause I don't mean to interrupt you, but
No, that's
I know
all right.
over the years, all of us have gone to every delegation member
Every
possible, even outside of our districts, our county. And you go down to Baltimore and you ask delegates down there, everybody wants to restore the highway revenue user funds.
Then do
But
it.
they never voted in.
Well,
I've never heard anyone not want to restore it.
Right, this
Hopefully, we're
might be
getting
the year.
closer.
Yeah,
This might be the year.
Thanks, Charlie.
And one year I asked Delegate Weibel to find out what our emissions fees were for Washington County. Our emission fees for our residents were higher than highway user revenues we were receiving. I think we were like $600,000, $800,000 for highway user paving money, but yet our revenues at the emission statement, they're off of 41 out of 10.
Well, and I know you asked for them to get rid of that
Yeah.
up here in Washington County. I don't know if that'll go anywhere, but
That's a tough one. That's why. All right, sorry, Charlie.
that's okay.
Good job.
Last Wednesday, I attended a board meeting with the Washington County Housing Authority, and very positive things are happening over there. And then one general comment that I wanted to make today, that kind of piggybacks Commissioner Baker's comment, was that we are about to move into a new budget cycle. And last April, we voted to lower the employment tax back to 3.0. And since we're coming up on budget season, I just wanted to remind county staff and the commissioners that as a part of that conversation of reducing that tax, Commissioner Kiefer, with concurrence of Commissioners Baker and myself, wanted staff to be working under the assumption of a 2.8 employment tax income model when working on the budget last year. And hopefully we're going to do that this year so that we can follow through on our promise. I believe in my vote then and still believe that we can get the rate back to where it was and give the citizens of Washington County a bit of a tax break. It's my hope that within the next several months we can follow through on our promise to reduce that tax. I'd also like to point out that although public safety was used as a tool of objection, public safety has not been impacted at all by our decision. As a matter of fact, as we said we would, public safety was made a priority by all the commissioners, and not just with words, but with our dollars. And then finally, last night, I attended the MML meeting hosted by the town of Funkstown. And after the meeting, I spoke to the mayor of Hancock, and he mentioned something that I thought was a good idea. He mentioned it would be nice if the county would email all the municipalities the agendas for the following week's meetings. So I was wondering if that's something we could start doing. I know we received the agenda from the city of Hagerstown, and honestly, it would be nice if we received.
Pardon me?
It would be nice if we received the agenda from even each of the municipalities, because it is nice to see what's going on in Hagerstown, what they're looking at in case we wanted to go, but it would be nice to receive those from all the municipalities as well. And so hopefully that's something maybe we can start doing. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Wagner.
Good morning. I want to share the commissioner's condolences for Mr. Bloom and his family. I know that he'll be missed, and the Leitersburg and the whole community actually will miss Mr. Bloom. Terry, I agreed with the majority of all your comments. I think going into the budget season, only thing I want is I don't think anybody's against giving money back to the citizens. Anything I would like from our staff and our CFO would be that we make we need a lot of information to make a responsible decision. I mean, we have a lot coming up, and I'm sure you're aware of it. Safer Grant's going to start paying for. We just did the wages for law enforcement, which is a big chunk. We have a lot of deferred maintenance, well over several $1 million in deferred maintenance. And I think we still have $20 million unfunded for the public training center, if I'm not mistaken. And we got our pension plan we got to keep an eye on. And also, we're going to be facing minimum wage compression, I'm sure, because minimum wage going up, that means it's going to cost us more money. So I ask that we get a lot of good information so we can make a responsible decision, whether it be 2.8 or whether it be a rebate to every household that's not reoccurring. I guess I'm more concerned with reoccurring expenses. So that's what I really need to see. What's our at least 3 years out? So I'll know where we stand.
We probably would want a 5-year projection to help us. It's probably best. I'm sorry, Commissioner, I interrupted.
That's it for me.
Thank you. Again, I want to express my sympathies to the family, Mr. Bloom, those folks out at Leitersburg. And at his age, he still was volunteering at the station every day. And if I understand, he was still one of their unpaid volunteer drivers. A credit to his dedication to his community. If I recall, he has several family members there as volunteers as well. It's a family tradition, so my condolences to the family, Mr. Bloom. I do want to extend credit to our highway department and water quality during the snowstorm. Had a lot of calls from people thanking them for the work that they were doing. Highway people were there in rough conditions, and Jim Hastings, one of our water quality guys, called me in the middle of a ice storm. His crew went out in the middle of the storm and was doing a sewer leak break whatever you want to describe it, in the middle of sleet storm. So kudos to all of our employees, especially all our emergency responders, 911, police, the volunteer fire companies, everybody who was prepared to do their job during that snowstorm. But thank you, Highways, and Jim Hastings and his crew there at Water Quality. I also got several calls about the volunteer funding. I think it's been stymied or stuck at $48,000 now since 2009. I've spoken to several of the fire companies on the success of their mailings. One company had a good success, one company had bad success. That's the mailings that they go out to their community that they serve. One company had under a 15% response rate. So I would suggest that maybe we look at increasing that $48,000 to a higher amount to offset all the inflation that's hitting everybody in this community. In regards to us reviewing our taxes, I would like to see a 5-year projection on what's going to happen. With this morning watching the news, with inflation at 7%, gas projected to go up to over $4 a gallon here locally. It's important that we return every amount of money we can to our taxpayers to offset those situations that's occurring in their life so they can pay their bills. So I'd like to see a 5-year projection so we can make accurate and a responsible decision. And again, one thing about the Arpa funding, I have visited several of the mayors with Secretary Wendy Peters in regards to ARPA funding. Secretary Peters is the representative for Governor Hogan for Tri-County Council, and one of her missions in those visits was also to help these small towns with their ARPA funding, but also find out ways that they can fund these projects with other resources and save their ARPA fund money for larger projects, kind of what we've all been talking about. So how can we best use all the programs out there along with our ARPA funding? So that was good. And in regards to the highway user revenue, last week, Mark Whitmire, the representative for Governor Hogan in Western Maryland, asked us for the details on information from our funding. I think you supplied information from 2005 to 2009, and we're hoping, according to what Commissioner Burke reported, and I think last night at MML, Dan Dave from Smithsburg also mentioned it from the MML level, that there is a push for Governor Hogan to restore those funds. I think every year for the last 10 years, we've been asking for 81 to be widened and to restore the highway user revenue. And that highway user revenue that we have allows us to spend other funding on emergency services, other parts of our budget, and to pave more than 5 miles of road a year. So those items that you're reporting on are good. So keep up the work on that and keep us informed on that at Mako. So I believe that concludes.
Back to
Go ahead.
Smithsburg, Councilman, you had mentioned
Dan Dave.
state funding versus
At MML and Mako, they're both looking to get highway user revenue restored to back to like our highest point, 2009. And I think it was a little over 9 million.
actually Smithsburg. You were talking about the sewer system.
Oh, Smithsburg, I think
That's-
Delegate Wyville received some funding in Hogan's budget for their wastewater treatment, and we have that water project that's been going for 4 or 5 years now, correct?
Correct.
That's the one at Smithsburg?
That's the one out.
And that's what the councilman was talking about last night.
Because we have that in for discussion today in our budget. You know, when we're going to discuss some CIP.
The Smithsburg,
I thought I saw it in there
I
today.
don't know.
I'll have to
That's
look
not in there, right?
closer.
We'll pull that up.
Okay, we'll discuss that then.
Okay.
All right, I think that.
Hey, Jeff, can I say one more thing I forgot? I watched the city council meeting a couple weeks ago, and of course, Randy's always going to go back to the Huey helicopter that veterans want in the Vietnam monument. I'm a little disappointed. There's 10,000 veterans in the county. I understand you got to listen to every citizen's caution or words on why they might oppose it, knowing that there's 10,000 veterans and I'm one of them. I think they did a balloon study, which seemed to be okay, but no one seemed to like it. I'm just very disappointed that there hadn't been a decision made and they've added more complications to this process. So I can assure you, if Jim Klein would have came before us, there'd be a Huey helicopter at that monument on the county commissioners board. So anyway, that's my last plea. I would hope that all the veterans would voice their opinion on that and maybe show up the next meeting and see how that goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe that concludes our report. Staff comments, we'll bring Tom in next,
I
or
was gonna say, can we go to?
Mary Ann?
Can we go to Mary Ann Burke
Sure.
first, because she has to go, and then we come back to staff comments?
we have them?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, we can bring Mary Ann in. Did we have a resolution actually physically here to approve, written?
Yes.
Oh, there it is. Do we need to read it, or?
No.
Okay, we'll make our, and you just need a consensus for that, correct?
We'll need a motion.
Motion, okay.
Resolutions in the agenda.
Motion to approve the resolution is what we'll need after she details it. Come on in.
Morning.
Good morning. Marion, please have a seat, introduce yourself in the matter, and we'll get you out of here on time for your next meeting.
Good morning. My name is Mary Ann Burke. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington County Arts Council, and I've been in that position for over 13 years now. The reason I'm here is thanks to Mr. Downey and Mr. Moderano. The state of Maryland, which is our major funder, is asking that all arts councils approve and submit legislation that they are delegated as the official arts county of each jurisdiction. And we have none, and both Mr. Downey and Mr. Moderano have searched all the county's records. So I need that to apply for our funding.
Yeah, it's,
If I can answer any questions, I'm happy to do that. I do appreciate your help.
no, it'd be fine. Do we need a vote on that?
A motion to approve the resolution.
Motion to approve the resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any
Charlie.
further discussion? First and second?
Charlie, you second.
All right, we're flowing.
Charlie had the second.
Oh, okay, either way. Christie, you take care of it. Thank you. Any further discussions? You got everybody willing to jump in the gun to help you?
That's wonderful.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is, it is.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate it. I just need to get a copy of
Yeah.
it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Done. Thank you, Mary Ann.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, can we send that to her today?
Yeah, I'll email you the signed copy.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. Now we'll get back to staff reports. We want to bring Tom in, go through
Yeah,
the lobby first?
Yeah, they can hear out there, it's just a little behind.
Okay,
Apparently, it's a little bit behind, but
come on in.
they should be coming. There you go.
Hey.
They were flipping coin of who was gonna come in first, so.
Well, you won the coin toss.
Yeah.
Now, there's three of you out there, three-sided coin.
No, we don't have any, nobody carries change anymore, right?
Director Hayes, please introduce yourself and the topic.
All right, so David Hayes, Director of Emergency Services, and I wanted to take just a few short minutes this morning. I heard a couple commissioners actually already acknowledge the recent passing of the Leitersburg Volunteer Fire Company's President Butch Bloom. And I just wanted to make note here this morning and officially recognize that they're looking to declare that a line of duty death related to COVID. If you know Butch, he didn't travel many places and spent enormous amounts of time in the firehouse. And about the same time that his condition came on board, we also had several of our own staff contract COVID and then a few additional volunteers. So there is reasonable presumption that he likely contracted his COVID in the act of providing services to the Leitersburg community and such. Their membership has voted through resolution last night to rule this as a line of duty death. That is one step in a series of processes that have to come forward. It will travel to the Maryland State Firemen's Association.
Do you need our support on that?
Yeah, I would certainly encourage that, and that can be through consensus. But if,
Just a consensus, everybody's nodding to support that?
Yeah.
The motion or the resolution by their fire company?
so, and I don't want to belabor this, but I felt it was important to acknowledge that while he wasn't actually killed in the line of duty, it was a line of duty death, and he certainly, for all the work that he does or has done for decades, and I'm talking about 60 years, deserves it. But I just want about 10 more seconds here.
Okay.
In calendar year 21, Leitersburg Fire Department was dispatched and responded for 499 calls for service. Mr. Bloom responded on 421 of those. So I'll make sure my numbers are right. So
How many
that's
total calls
499 total dispatch calls for service
by him?
by him,
And what
and
was-
he responded on 421. So when I tell you that there's a large presumption that he likely contracted this, everything he did was about the Leitersburg Fire Department,
No
the
doubt.
Leitersburg community. So we have a flag that we will be presenting at his services. I'm happy to present that on behalf of the county, unless a commissioner wants that responsibility, and I certainly would
Why
delegate.
don't you do that on behalf of the commissioners?
Absolutely. Okay. Any questions? Nope. Thank you for allowing me the time this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Next, we will have either Tom or Larry, whoever won the next flip of the coin. If you're listening, please come in. Mr. Etchison, good morning. Please introduce yourself and.
I asked Larry to come in today to talk about an issue that Commissioner Baker brought up a few weeks ago, so.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Just a real quick issue. We want to talk about a temporary COVID-19 sick leave bank benefits for new employees, as Commissioner Baker brought up in December. In response to the financial impact COVID-19 illnesses and mandated quarantines have on our new employees, these are employees having less than 6 months of time in service who have not yet accrued or have access to their paid sick or vacation leave. We request the Commissioner's approval to temporarily authorize, for a period of 60 calendar days effective today, Human Resources with the authority to grant sick leave bank benefits to our new employees who are absent as a result of COVID-19 illnesses and mandated quarantines.
We can revisit that in 60 days, right?
Sir.
Yeah, we just wanted to make it a short term to try to address the issue that we have right now. So we do have people that are 6 months, in their first 6 months, even though they accrue sick leave and vacation benefits, they are not allowed, they don't have access to them, so they can't take them. So when they're out for COVID, they're taking it without pay. So I think we wanted to make them eligible, they could apply for it.
So they would get paid if they don't have any sick pay. They get paid if they're out on COVID with proof of COVID.
Yeah.
And is that a back pay for somebody that's already been penalized because they were out on COVID?
Well, I'm proposing from the beginning of today, if you wanted to backdate it, I would have to have a date, sir, that we would start.
Right, we
back
want a
from.
particular date to.
I think there's some.
That could be challenging, but not impossible.
How many employees have not been paid that's been out on COVID? Do we know that?
Very, very few, sir. I have
So
one
then that
right
won't
now
be
that
over.
potentially could be, but very few have. Most of our employees have had their benefits and were able to do so.
And I agree. If we expect our employees to work in COVID, especially, the one grouped together, highway, water quality, I think we need to pay them if they're out on COVID. So, but I'm just wondering how many that's already been penalized.
Well, originally, the county, before I came to the county, the county was paying everyone, and then that stopped as COVID came off, and now we're back to where it's getting a little more presumptive. And then this way, we can use the sick leave benefits for those.
Well,
that
keep in mind, I mean, that was a program that was in place, that was a state and federal program
Right.
that was in place in the county, and that ended, and the
Yes.
county extended that further, and then we got to the point where we didn't do that anymore. So the issue that I think Commissioner Baker brought up was about new employees who didn't have
Right.
access to, I mean, if something happens to a current employee who's been here for a while, they have sick leave and those kind of things that they've already accrued.
That is correct.
New employees do not have that, so they didn't have any access to anything. So that's what we were trying to address, only on a short-term basis, or a short-term basis. That's why we said 60 days, and that can be extended. But you're right,
So,
anything that we want.
Anytime within that 60 days, we decide to take a little different direction, we have that ability.
Oh, you could, yeah. I mean, it's obviously, this is just a temporary thing that this board would adopt, and to go back to, if you wanted to go back until, January 1 or December 1 and have us take a look at that, because, I mean, there have been a few, I believe.
Well, my question is, we started discussion 2-3 weeks ago. Has anybody between the time we started this discussion until today been affected by not having pay due to COVID being a new hire?
Most I know of right now is one that just would become eligible for this under the new.
Can we address that individual or any of those that might have occurred in between that gap?
I mean, if you want us to go back to, again, January
like you
1 or
said,
December 15th or December 1, we could go back and look and see if they're renting in that.
Sure. There's currently one that if this was approved today, we would be able to take care of immediately.
All right, let's review what we're getting ready to have a consensus on. 60-day review.
Are we talking about, are we going by CDC's 5-day quarantine rule?
That's what our policy is right now.
Okay.
Yes, under the current policy.
I guess one of the benefits is we don't want someone who's used their sick days because of COVID from the pandemic to say, if I call in sick today, I won't get a paycheck, that they come in with maybe symptoms and spread COVID. So we want to encourage people that if they're sick to stay home. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, because our newer employees, again, even though they accrue, even six, and I say newer, 6 months.
Or less.
Less than 6 months or less. Because even though, again, they officially accrue vacation and sick leave, under our policies, they can't take those until they've been here for 6 months. So if I'm here for 3 months, even though I may have a little bit accrued, I have no access to that. So I have to take time without pay if they're off with COVID. So we wanted to make the sick leave bank, pursuant to the concern raised by this board, to allow, that's just for newer employees. That's for the new, when I say new employees, I mean 6 months or less.
All right, to quote Randy Wagner, summarize this in 100 words.
And they're showing that they did have COVID.
That is correct.
Yeah, they just can't be, there has to be some integrity and honesty to the situation.
Absolutely. They would have to show that they had COVID. They would be less than 6 months, which would not give them access to their accruing sick or vacation time. This would then use the sick bank benefits to bridge that, so they would not have any loss in pay, and it would not have a cost to the county because those are donated benefits by.
There you go.
One more question, Jeff, and you go for it. You've been
I
trying.
wanted something real good.
How many hours in the sick bank?
We have over 4,500 hours right now.
And that's donated by the employees, correct?
That is correct.
So I can't see any reason why we wouldn't do this.
Yeah.
So,
I don't either, sir.
Very good, Joe. So is there a summary that we can know what for sure how 100 words or less, so to speak?
Yes, sir. So for the next 60 days,
Starting
starting when? Today was, but if you have a different date, that's fine.
Do you want to
We're
guys?
going to go 60 days from here, but if you want us to go back, then.
Well,
You
there's,
can always extend or
well,
shorten.
between the time we started this discussion, it was delayed to today. Was
That was
any-
December 14th, sir.
So how many people were affected by that date?
We can determine that, sir, but I suspect it's very, very small, maybe one.
Gentlemen, would you want to consider that as well?
Yeah.
I mean,
All right.
we could do that.
December
Okay.
14th. That's
Yes.
fine. So from December 14th, from backdating to December 14th, from 60 days from today, we will have the temporary use of sick pay bank benefits for those employees with 6 months or less that would not have access to their vacation or sick time in order to bridge that gap if they have COVID-19 illness or mandated absence.
And how fast the turnaround would that be to be on their paycheck?
Well, we'll study it right off, and I suspect we're going to be able to find it within a day.
That would
and then
be-
the next pay cycle should be in.
That would be fine. That way I don't want.
They shouldn't be impacted.
It should,
Depending on
it
what,
should be very quick, sir. That should be
Because
very
It's
the
just
quick.
one
depending on the
concern was
timing.
direct deposit
Yeah.
and withdrawals and all that. So commissioners, you have any other comments? Consensus or a motion to approve?
motion to approve is
Here we
stated.
go. Is there a second?
Second.
Hey.
Charlie got it.
I was going to let Terry do it since he was his idea. but-
That's nice of you guys. Thank you for that consideration. A first and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
thank you,
John.
thank you, Commissioners.
You're welcome. Next, I believe we have Tom Brown. Mr. Brown, good morning. Please introduce yourself in the matter.
Good morning, Tom Brown, Emergency Manager. Here to give you an update on the COVID metrics and county COVID activities. So, good news is our positivity rate has gone down some since last week. Current positivity rate as of yesterday is 24.46. Meredith is reporting that as of yesterday, their total census was 294 patients, with 78 of those hospitalized for COVID, 58 of those 78 are unvaccinated, and 27 patients are on a ventilator, 5 being hospitalized for COVID. I don't have a breakdown of how many positive cases are Omicron versus Delta, because that's something the state tests and has not reported to emergency management. However, the type of variant individuals are testing positive for does not have a bearing on the response and recovery efforts of the county or the strain in which this latest surge continues to have on our medical system. While those stats certainly have their place and are important, regardless of the variant, the end result at this point is still the same, which is individuals are testing positive, the virus is spreading, normal everyday activities are being disrupted, people are being hospitalized, some are experiencing long-term effects while others are unfortunately dying. The drop in the positivity rate is an early indicator that we may have reached our peak, as projections had indicated in the middle of January. However, I strongly caution that we do not let our guard down at this point. Until our positivity rate is below the 10% threshold, the CDC uses the designated jurisdiction as a high transmission area. And until the weather breaks and outside activities resume, giving individuals more space, we should continue to take necessary precautions to keep the disruption of this virus at a minimum. I'm not going to give you a rundown of everything that the EOC is doing at this point, because needless to say, everything that I had briefed you on last week, we're continuing to do. One new activity, however, is we are working with the health department to set up processes to receive and distribute out the KN95 masks from the state that are being delivered. And the operational changes that were mentioned last week by county government are still in effect. There will be a review of those on February the 9th.
Tom, I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but, well, the sad news is, what, 28 deaths in the last 14 days?
Yes, sir.
So I don't know if you can answer this question, but I know it's almost next to impossible it was to get an infusion. Is that picking up better now, or don't you know that answer?
I don't know a definitive answer for that. I think at the state level and even more particularly at the federal level, they're still trying to make determinations whether or not the infusions help. I understand that there is an argument to be made that there are some Delta infections out there, and I think those infusions mainly were to address the Delta and help the people that had the Delta variant. They're not really sure that the infusions actually help the Omicron variant. And I think that's what they're trying to determine. But I have not received any information from the federal government yet at this point, whether or not that's going to be an option.
The lines at Creighton Boulevard decreased significantly.
Yeah, the lines at Creighton Boulevard have decreased. Maryland National Guard were deployed. Meredith was able to extend some hours. We think with all that, plus we're now past the holidays, that's helped decrease the lines at this point.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Would you introduce your guest?
This is Brooke Grossman from Horizon Goodwill, and she's going to make a presentation today in reference to assistance to house the COVID positive homeless individuals.
Great, thank you for giving me a couple of minutes on your agenda this morning. So as you know, we've seen our positivity rate in the county and city increase. We obviously have seen an increase in number of individuals that are either in congregate care or unsheltered that are testing positive and either ending up in the hospital with a need for discharge into quarantine or needing to quarantine based upon their positive case. And in previous years, when the pandemic first started, there were funds available via the health department and emergency command to help place those folks into shelter. There is not that resource available now, so the cold weather shelter does have resources to shelter individuals who were with them prior to testing positive and who need quarantine. But anyone that is unsheltered or in other shelter environments or even newly homeless, we actually had a woman who was evicted last week and tested positive, so she couldn't go into shelter and we had to help with quarantine. So we're seeking assistance in $10,000 to be used specifically for the shelter of those individuals. Our staff at Goodwill will serve as point of contact for individuals seeking shelter, the hospital, emergency command, and the health department. We'll confirm with them the need for quarantine and the length of, so that we're maximizing. Right, if somebody only needs a 2-day quarantine, we're only going to do 2 days. If somebody needs 6, we'll do 6, and so we can be that bridge there to ensure they're getting what they need. Our staff also will serve as the bridge then to ensure that they're connected to the health department if they need medications while they're quarantining, and social services if they need food. And also, fingers crossed, the one that will make sure that they get back to shelter when they're done quarantining, so that we're not seeing them come back out onto the street.
I do have one question. How do these homeless be known that they do have COVID? Are they picked up off the street and they transported to a hospital, or?
We want to confirm that the case is real. I hate to say that, but we do. So far, the calls have either come to us from the health department with an individual that has been confirmed in needing placement, or the hospital as part of a discharge plan, because we're also had seen, because there was not this resource to the hospital, folks were staying hospitalized for their full quarantine that didn't need to be, so they're taking up a bed there as well, right?
Gotcha.
So this way, even if someone were to call me from the community and say, I am homeless and I have tested positive, then we have to go through our chains, to follow process and make sure we confirm that and the length of quarantine.
I might have missed this. Where the homeless going to be housed in quarantine?
I'm sorry.
Where will the homeless be housed while they're in quarantine?
So we're using a variety of locations, partially because in the cold weather months, we're also seeing more people who are living in hotels right now. So where there was opportunity at one point to maybe have a block of rooms somewhere, that isn't the case. So we have a couple of vendors that we're working with. And again, our staff are securing the room. Even I'll share with you on Christmas Eve, because I happen to be the only person around when the hospital needs somebody. I went, secured the room, took the key card to the hospital, delivered, made sure the person had everything, so there was no touch for them to go in either. And we'll continue to do that.
Can I just make a personal comment here? You're asking for $10,000 out of the funds, just so that we can try to keep better control over how much of that we're spending. Why couldn't you start at like 5,000 and then maybe come back and ask for more if you use that up? Because we are on the backside of this, getting close to the backside of this. So why not ask for maybe 5,000 right now, and then if you need that other amount?
Sure. So we had met with mayor and council last week as well, and actually came in with 5,000 and got the feedback that they would prefer to do the opposite. So we came with the same ask to you. Instead of having us come back, I'd really hate to find ourselves, even since last week, we've already placed 3 people in 1 week. And while we are on the back side of this, that need for quarantine is still going to exist. And so I would hate to find us in a position where we depleted our resources and had to wait to come back to another meeting.
And who makes sure that these people are quarantining through the day and not just leaving the hotel and run around the...
They're not going into the rooms, obviously, but we are monitoring as closely as we can. And there's some of that is a little bit beyond our control. We can't lock the door.
So you did already get 10,000 from the city?
I'm sorry?
You already got 10,000 from the city?
I would be inclined to, I'd be scared that, and it's a good point you have there, Commissioner, but I'd be scared that as hard as it is to get to us sometime on a week off or something, that you would deplete. I would just hope you did, your bookkeeping was up and you could give us a report back sometime where you used money, but you got to get the homeless, they're just going to keep spreading. So I agree homeless need to be housed and treated with compassion. So, I would be fine with it.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'd motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Well, just for me, to be honest with you, $10,000 doesn't seem like a whole lot of money for you all to be trying to do what you're trying to do. And I do think very highly of the point of contact, have a lot of respect for Goodwill Horizon, or Horizon Goodwill. So, I just want to thank you for all your efforts and everything you're trying to do and help our community. Again, $10,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money to me. I don't know. But
I would just say that we all did receive an email from Reach that was also saying, hey, we would be available to help as well. And so that's where I was coming from too. Is there the ability?
We have a motion on the floor, but a discussion, thank you. But my point is just update us on how you're spending the money, okay?
Yeah, that's all I need. I'm fine with it.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brooke, for all y'all do down there. Tom, thank you.
Okay, continuing with staff reports. Kirk, do you have anything from legal?
Nothing this morning.
Krista?
No, I would just like to remind citizens that if you wish to participate in the county commissioner meetings, please do so by calling 240-313-2204, or you can email me at khart@washco-md.net 24 hours, at least 24 hours in advance of the meeting so we can get you scheduled. Thank you.
Okay, next, County Administrator, do you have a report?
Thank you, President Klein. Just a few things. I just want to thank all of our employees for all the hard work that they do. President Klein, you already mentioned about the snowstorm and the ice event last week. That caused
Sewer, mess.
that caused some some unique situations with the ice and the pack down. And I know that I was communicating with our highway department at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night about some concerns about some roads, and they had people out. They called people out to try to take care of those roads. So I appreciate that. But I tried to make a list, and I usually don't do this because I'm afraid I'm going to forget somebody. But our highway department, our Parks and Rec department, our solid waste, our water quality, our maintenance staff, of course, first responders, including the sheriff's department, our transit department, PR, emergency management, all those departments, and there's probably other ones, so if I forgot you, please forgive me, but I want to thank all of our employees who are out somehow connected every time there's a storm going on. So, and also, I know and IT is involved in that too, and I know IT was out on the weekends. We had some issues with our computer system at the landfill, so I appreciate everyone's patience with that. And I know IT was out early Saturday morning and spent the weekend getting them back up so they were up and running on Monday morning. So I wanted to thank all those departments and all of our employees for all the hard work, and that's all I had.
Right, thank you, sir. Continuing with our agenda, Brian Overcash, if you're out there listening, please come in. We have a quarterly safety report by Brian. Thank you, sir. Good morning. Please introduce yourself and the matter.
Morning, John. Morning, Commissioners. Brian Overcash, Safety Compliance and Training Coordinator for Washington County. I thank you for this opportunity to present on the safety program. I'm here this morning to present to you the Safety Committee's quarterly report on the county's safety performance, activities, outcomes, successes, and challenges. The information we are providing is based on performance indicators for the safety program. We saw a decrease of 9% in workers' compensation in 2021 in comparison to 2020. In 2021, there were a total of 97 claims, workers' comp claims, compared to 105 in 2020. In 2021, there were 18 lost time claims, which mean an employee was out of work, which was a decrease of 7.5% from 24 lost time claims in 2020. The decrease of 1% in both medical and report-only claims. Medical claims, just receiving medical attention, in 2021 was 52. In 2020, they were 54. And report-only claims in 2021 were 27. In 2020, there was 28. The county's OSHA incident rate was 17.5%. This is down slightly 1% from the previous year and down 0.5% from 2019. The Safety Committee meets once a quarter. We discuss safety awareness, concerns, reports, activities, and safety consciousness throughout the workplace for Washington County employees and the citizens of Washington County. The reinvigoration of the Safety Committee, there have been two meetings. The first one was held at Downs Woods Park with the Safety Committee, and the second one was at the Regional Airport just last month. The Safety Committee members are tasked with completing 2 observation reports and reporting back to the Safety Committee for the next meeting. So we kind of know what's going on within the departments based on their representative. Departmental safety reviews have been completed at highways and water quality. There is great support from the members of the Safety Committee and county staff, and I would like to personally thank publicly Tyler Forrest and Ryan Rowland at Water Quality and Melvin Fraley at Highways, who have completed many inspections throughout this process. We have completed 24 safety inspections and 20 safety observations throughout the county system. So it gets me out, it gets our employees out, seeing what kind of safety issues we have in the county. The county takes safety of our employees to heart. Our goal is for each employee to go home the same way they come to work, of course. Since June of last year, we have been sending out a weekly newsletter called the Danger Dodger. This to help improve safety awareness of our employees. And as of this week, 26 Danger Dodger editions have been sent out to our employees. Those without email access, they are posted in each department. The key performance indicators that we are using show that the county is going in a positive direction in regards to safety as far as our numbers go. But we have much more work to do. While we continue to face challenges, I, the Human Resource Department, and our Safety Committee are committed to a continuous process of improvement to promote safety throughout the county. Again, I thank you guys for this opportunity. I'll be meeting with you quarterly to give you updates on our progress. So thank you for this time.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And what Brian said is what I believe, and I know this, what this board believes. Safety of our employees is the most important thing. And that's what, I'm always saying when Brian contacts me or somebody contacts me, I'm looking out for the safety of our employee regardless of the situation. So I really appreciate you and the safety committee and everyone who's involved with that.
Thank you. Next up, construction bid award. I think Scott Hobbs.
He's out there.
Scott, if you're listening.
We didn't have any citizens.
Pardon me?
We didn't have any citizens that wanted to participate?
No, there was no citizens, correct?
Correct.
Scott, good morning.
Good morning, Scott Hobbs, Director of Engineering. I'm here to recommend that the board conditionally award the Leitersburg-Smithsburg Road and Stream Restoration Project along Wood Oak Creek contract to the lowest responsible bidder, Appalachian Stream Restoration LLC of Danville, West Virginia, in an amount of $507,000, and approve acceptance of the funding for this project from the Maryland Department of the Environment as part of the 319H Environmental Protection Agency Federal Grant Funding Program. Conditional award is based on receiving concurrence and award from MDE and EPA. The project was advertised in the Herald Mail, on the county's website, and email marketplace. 5 bids were received on December 22nd. The bids have been evaluated, and the low bid is in order, pending acceptance from MDE and EPA. The engineer's estimate was $550,000. The project involves restoration of approximately 950 lineal feet of stream adjacent to the Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant. The design-build project will improve water quality in accordance with standards set forth by Maryland and the Clean Water Act. This is a budgeted capital improvement project, DNG 030, and expenses are estimated at $562,000, including the bid award, other expenses in inspection, testing, utilities, and right-of-way, and construction contingency. An EPA federal grant is being secured through MDE and EPA and would fund approximately 60% of the contract. The county would provide local match contribution from the budgeted CIP. Any questions?
Motion to approve is presented.
There's a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Mr. Hobbs.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda, Joint Sewer Service Agreement, Mark Bradshaw. Mr. Bradshaw, good morning.
Good morning.
Please introduce yourself in the matter.
This morning here, I'm bringing the Joint Sewer Service Agreement and Associated Resolution before you for approval. In 1997, the county and the city executed the Consolidated General Service Agreement outlining areas in the county within which the city would provide sewer treatment. Throughout the years, the county and city have mutually amended the agreement total of 12 times, adding and deleting properties in the area identified in the JSSA. The county is proposing a capital improvement project to construct a new sewer line from Cedar Lawn area to the Morgansville area. The new line will transport the sewage designated on Exhibit A to the county's wastewater treatment plant. Before the flow transfer can take place, an amendment to the Consolidated General Service Agreement will need to be executed by the county and city. When the county and city staff met to discuss the proposed modifications to the agreement, both entities agreed it would be better to provide a new agreement incorporating all the amendments rather than creating amendment number 13. The city and county also executed the flow transfer agreement in 2003. This agreement transferred the sewage from the city's customers to the county's Conococheague wastewater treatment plant. This agreement will expire. This agreement requires the city to transfer the flow back to their treatment plant within 20 years from execution. The new JSSA gives the city 5 years to transfer the flow back to the city from date of execution. This area is designated on Exhibit A, and the executed flow transfer agreement is attached as Exhibit B. The financial impacts, once the flow transfer is completed, the county will receive approximately 1,700 new customers. These customers will expand the county's existing customer base by approximately 33% and will generate $800,000 in additional revenues. We also randomly pulled 10 bills, customers up in that area, and we determined what the new rate would be. And 9 of the 10 customers that we pooled actually will see a decrease in their sewer bill once the project's been completed and they are county customers instead of city customers.
Mark, on that, I guess for me I don't understand, you said 9 of 10 could possibly have a reduced cost?
Yes.
Why not all 10?
I'd have to look at the numbers, but they may have been using a larger amount of water than, let's say, the other 9.
Okay, I was just kind of curious.
What's I didn't see it on here, what's the cost of building this?
$15 million. It's in the capital improvement project. It's called capacity management. I can't remember the actual line item.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments?
This is also on the city's agenda for tonight for adoption by the mayor and council too.
Did they talk about it already?
Yes, they did a work session. I think it was last week. They did it in work session, and tonight's the formal adoption.
Could you summarize all that in about 50 words, exactly what's happening?
Up in the Morgansville area, the sewage, we own the collection system, but ultimately it discharges into the city, and the city provides treatment. Therefore, the city bills them people.
Right.
We want to take a portion of that area back and bring it to our treatment plant. And by doing that, we have to amend the current agreement.
So that agreement, I got that part, but the agreement, while we're amending that, it was made with a deadline on it once upon a time?
Oh, that's the flow transfer agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, the flow transfer agreement was executed in 2003, and it had a 20-year window in which the city would have to take that flow back. They're not going to be ready to take that back and get their pump station upgraded, so we added a total of 5 years from date of execution that they would have to take that back. And that's shown as on the red on your maps.
I make a motion to approve the joint sewer service agreement and associated resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, Mr. Bradshaw.
Thank you.
Up, intergovernmental cooperative purchase, Randy Noggle, if you're listening, come on in.
Brandy Nagelmeyer in the purchasing department. The recommendation I have for you this morning is the intergovernmental cooperative purchase, INTG 22-80, for one new 2023 Ford F-650. Move to authorize by resolution for the Department of Water Quality to purchase one new 2023 Ford F-650 for a total cost of $89,755 and to utilize another jurisdiction's contract. That would be a Sourcewell contract that was awarded to National Auto Fleet Group out of Watsonville, California. The Code of Public Law, Washington County, Maryland, provides that the Board of County Commissioners may procure goods and services through a contract entered into by another government entity as long as we abide by the same terms and conditions of that contract. The county will benefit with a direct cost savings by using this agreement due to the economies of scale that the contract has leveraged. This truck will be replacing a 2003 Ford 550 with 108,753 miles on it. It's being replaced due to the cost of the upkeep to keep it on the road. Funding is available in the CIP budget for this department.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. And next up, Rick Curry. And Brandy, I think 2 years ago, you were made president of what organization?
Maryland Public Purchasing Association. I just ascended to immediate past president.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And here comes the other guy who was on that board.
All kinds of celebrities here this
Yes,
morning.
indeed. Good morning, sir. Please introduce yourself in the matter.
Morning, gentlemen, ladies. Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing. Subject is Intergovernmental Cooperative Purchase, INTG 22-0079. New utility vehicles. The recommended motion to authorize the purchase by resolution for the Division of Emergency Service to purchase 3 new 2022 Chevy Tahoes for a cost of $49,888 from Criswell Chevrolet and to utilize another jurisdiction's contract awarded by the state of Maryland. Contract number 001B600354 for a total cost of $149,664. The DES is requesting to purchase 3 vehicles to be placed that exceeds the county's vehicle and equipment type usage guidelines, which was enacted back in 2001. The GRV is recommended to have a 10-year economic life cycle. The vehicles that will be purchased will replace those 3 vehicles which will be advertised on Gov Deals for auctioning. The Code of Public Laws does allow for this board to participate in another jurisdiction's contract. The savings would be for the board and the taxpayers that we would not go through the total bid process, evaluating the bids and putting the bids together and whatnot. You can see in the discussion section, the division director has given an explanation for the vehicles. Also, the impact, the fiscal impact list that there is money for the 2 vehicles, and the 3rd vehicle will be paid for from cost saved on the LoSAP program, and concurrences from the chief financial officer and the director of budget and finance. And also, you have the attachment from Criswell Chevrolet for their quote and the resolution for this purchase. And that concludes my recommendation for cooperative purchase of the 3 utility vehicles. Questions?
Comments, questions?
Motion to approve.
Or second?
Second.
A first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Next up, refunding opportunity. Kelsey, I believe it's you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kelsey Mace, Interim Chief Financial Officer. This morning, I wanted to bring to your attention that our financial advisor has identified a potential refunding opportunity that includes a Series 2013 and 2014 general obligations bonds. Together, they could produce an estimated savings of $680,000 or 3.91% net present value. This is above the industry standard benchmark of 3% and meets the county policy of 3 to 5%. The potential savings are just an estimate and could vary due to market conditions. The refunding bonds would be issued in conjunction with the county's 2022 general obligation bonds in May 2022. So staff today is requesting permission to move forward with the process of refunding the identified bonds. The actual authorization to issue the bonds will come in the form of a resolution in late April of 2022. So there's no motion needed at this time. I just have a request for a consensus to pursue the refunding opportunity. As the market changes and the financial advisor will monitor, we can change this and decide not to issue the bonds if the savings aren't what we think they will be.
I'm fine. All right, me, consensus move forward. Okay. I see 4 nods. Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Kelsey, and our financial advisor. We're always looking for ways to refinance any borrowing that we've done in the past. So we're always trying to identify those, and we'll continue to do that.
Yes, correct. This just allows us to prepare the official statement in a manner that would include the refunding. We can choose to pull it up to the date of sale.
Thank you. Next on our agenda item, right on time, our American Rescue Plan Capital Improvement Schedule.
Andrew should be out there.
I'll
I'll go ahead and just kick it off until he gets in here. But as you know, obviously, Washington County was given $29.4 million of American Rescue Plan funding. We received $14.7 million of that in June of 2021. The Treasury Department has just come out with a final rule within the last week or two. So we're still going through those. They've had some interim final rules, but they've now come through with the final rule. But part of what I did as the county administrator, I put together a committee to take a look at that. Andrew and Kelsey were by default chairing that committee. The rest of you see in here, Mark and Susan and David and Susan, 2 Susans, sat down and had a number of discussions, and we looked at a number of projects. And so what I wanted to come in today to provide you with some information about what the committee has looked at, what our thoughts are, and then get some thoughts from this board.
Before we begin, I'd like to wish Susan happy birthday. You can't keep that secret.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I think we knew that, John.
So, yeah, and just so you know, and I know Commissioner Baker, I heard him over here earlier.
For us old guys.
We knew the one in the agenda was small, but that's the way the agenda's set up. But obviously, Andrew was ahead of the game and wanted to provide a larger copy for.
That's too big, John.
That's too big? Okay, we'll try to do better next time. We'll do that.
Andrew, welcome back after.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I hope things are well.
Yeah, things are going better.
Thank you. All right, please introduce yourselves in the discussion.
All right. Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
Kelsey Mace, Interim Chief Financial Officer.
And obviously, I've been part of that whole discussion, and as I mentioned, Susan, Mark, and Dave, we're all part of the committee, so we've all worked together. So we're not all going to present, but we're all here to answer any questions and provide any questions that you or any answers.
Certainly. So before you, we have a presentation. We'll go through some information about the American Rescue Plan Act, as well as kind of a more detailed program list. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask them. We'll also take time at the end to go over some more detailed responses. So we're here before you to talk about the American Rescue Plan Act, as well as FY21 Capital Improvement Plan reserves that we still have available. And so we are presenting here on behalf of the Arpa committee. So in brief, the Arpa program is intended to support the pandemic response, bring back jobs, and lays the groundwork for a strong and equitable recovery. That's kind of what its overall mission is. And there are eligible uses of funds that you can see up there on your screen. So one being support public health response, address the negative economic impacts, services to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay for essential workers, infrastructure, which in this case is limited to clean water, drinking water, and broadband. There's a revenue replacement category that can be used for up to $10 million expenditures, and lastly, administrative expenses. So in total, Washington County has received $29.4 million of ARPA funds from the U.S. Treasury. The first tranche or allocation of this was received in June, and that was $14.7 million, what you've been using up to this point to allocate money towards projects. The second tranche of $14.7 million will be received June of 2022.
Andrew, you know me, I always ask a question. Is that guaranteed? Is that for this June, guaranteed the other half?
I believe so, right, Kelsey? I mean, you have a date a window that it's going to be received?
That's my understanding.
So it's in the bank.
We haven't, it is not in the bank, and the check's not in the mail yet, but we're
relatively sure.
Yeah, from everything that I've heard, I mean, there's been no rumblings about that it's not gonna come. So.
I'm sorry,
As far as we know,
As far as we know,
yeah,
it's on its way, and that's how they divide it up. And part of the reason was that they wanted to see how needs may change so that everyone doesn't spend all their money in the first allocation and then realize that there's still maybe more long ongoing needs. So we're kind of, I guess, in a position now, timing-wise, that works well, that we have been spending some out of our first allocation. We want to look at it as a whole for what things we want to accomplish, both long and short term, as well as we have the chance now that the final guidance has come out to look at what's going to be in place and at the state and other levels, because they're also looking at how they're going to spend their money. And so we want to make sure we can take advantage of, programs. And that's kind of where the broadband initiative came from last meeting. Was basically the state had taken some of their ARPA money and put it towards a broadband initiative. There was a matching requirement, and then that's where the county came in and used some of it. So the timing, that's kind of works out to where it sits well. It's also, we're going to be getting into our budget process as well and considering some projects. So yeah, a little bit long-winded, but that's, I think, our understanding of how all this is going to play out in terms of timing.
Thank you.
So we've spent about $6 million of ARPA funds so far, with the majority going towards premium pay. And I mentioned the broadband expansion was a big thing. And so as a committee, we were tasked with looking at program eligibility, some countywide priorities, the public input, and coming up with some recommended eligible programs and projects. So I think today there's some questions about, well, what things could we do? We're here kind of for informational purposes to summarize what we came up with. If you want to take action on some things, potentially can. We can go back also and provide some more detail based on some feedback that we received. So let's see.
When is the final date this money has to be spent?
The final date is funds need to be allocated by December 31st, 2024. And then projects need to be completed and spent by December 31st, 2026.
So there's not a real big rush to...
Yes and no. I mean, for operational, some of it's timing. Now, we're talking about some capital projects. If there's some design involved that takes several years, it would be nice to know that so we can get started, because a normal capital project does take several years if it's not already in the works to get underway. So yes, some things came to the committee that we actually ruled out because we haven't even gotten into the planning stages, and we're thinking this is a good project, but there's really no way that we can accomplish that within this time frame.
Right, and yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I can't say it any better than that, except that since it all has to be spent, projects have to be completed by the end of 2026. If you're not up and running now, there's a chance you might not get it done. So that went into our thought process as well.
So jumping into the next slide. The left side there, the ARPA public survey, if you recall, a survey did go out to the public, and that lists in order of ranking some of the priorities that were received from the public: fire and rescue, emergency operations center, business assistance, including nonprofits, premium pay for essential workers, water sewer infrastructure, assistance to households, technology for virtual services, travel, tourism, and hospitality, incentive for employee vaccination, public communication efforts related to COVID-19. So some of those don't exactly match up in similarity to the eligible categories, but you can kind of glean from that what I think the intent was. Kelsey, would you like to talk about the CIP reserves and kind of that process, which we also rolled into some of this discussion?
Sure. So as you know, in FY21, we had a surplus of funds that we transferred to the capital reserves. There was $9 million that was transferred. So far, we have allocated out $1.5 million to HCC and an additional $30,000 for the Sharpsburg well. That leaves $7.47 million remaining that could be used to help fund and stretch out these dollars that we're talking about today. Some of those things have already come up, which was discussions of equipment and apparatus for public safety.
Next slide.
So to kind of reiterate some of what Andrew's already spoken about, in June of 2021, we received our first disbursement of $14.6 million. To date, we have spent a little over $6 million of that, most of it being the premium pay, the Antietam broadband grant, and some IT equipment for disaster recovery. And again, in FY21, we transferred $9 million to the capital reserve. To date, we have allocated $1.5 million of that, which leaves remaining almost $7.5 million that we can use.
Question, does anything involve the reservoir for Boonsboro? Was that ARPA money as well?
We'll get to that. That's on the spreadsheet. And so we, as a committee, have made a recommendation that that would be out of capital reserves and not ARPA, but it's open to discussion. So yes, it is on your detailed sheet in the summary.
So I think, as I said, obviously we looked at the ARPA funds, we looked at our capital reserve. We want to look at them, all those available funding sources to try to stretch our dollars as far as we can based on the categories and everything else. So that's why you're going to see some recommendations.
Sorry, please forgive the interruption.
Next slide. So a little bit about the committee. I think we were tasked with compiling and vetting eligible programs, as well as looking at projects and preparing a schedule for consideration. John mentioned who's on that committee, and they are in the audience as well. I would say we met on average about twice a month through November to December. And then, like I said, we kind of got a curveball. We were operating under interim guidelines, and they were in place really for almost 2 years. And then they came out with final guidelines January 6th of 2022, just a few weeks ago. So we did need to go back and take a second look at some things. There were some minor changes. I'll say it didn't affect any of the programs that we're looking at. It's more they did narrow in some of the definitions for what would be eligible under certain programs and some of the reporting requirements. In terms of guiding purpose and questions, we did want to ask some questions in terms of how we were going to go about this. And I think, number one, we wanted to look at how to support community COVID-19 response efforts with a forward-looking outlook, how to address the unequal impacts of the pandemic, which is a major theme of this money. Not everyone was affected equally, and certainly those on the lower income range were more affected than others. And then something we talked about was what legacy type projects can be accomplished within the time frame, that December 2026, that otherwise would not be possible. A lot of things would be eligible with this money, but it's a unique opportunity where some things come along. We have needs that come up every year in the budget process that just maybe can't be funded. So what things could we potentially accomplish now that would be there for generations to come that otherwise wouldn't be able to be accomplished? And then lastly, how to leverage other funding sources to complete projects. Example, broadband initiative, that's something the county could have funded 100%, but if we can leverage some funding sources from the state, we want to take advantage of that. So in some of how the programs are structured, yes, 100% of the funds could come from the county, but I think it's important to recognize there's a lot of other opportunities out there, whether it's personal investment dollars that are coming into this or other grants or programs or things out there. We want to try to stretch every dollar that the county has as far as it can go. Next slide. So there's a lot of information on this page. It's more or less a summary of the handout sheet, which is even more detailed. Across the top, there's several different categories, and then each box kind of contains a list of some of the projects that we were considering and recommending, and then at the bottom is more or less a summary because in order to do all this, we weren't just looking at ARPA. We felt there's some really great things here that we could do. And so that's where the CIP reserves rolled in, because some of these could be funded under that, some could be funded under ARPA. But really, at some point, we can look at doing what's proposed on this sheet and trying to capture all that we have available to us in terms of funding. So the first category, public health, really captures a lot of the emergency service needs. There's some requests for breathing apparatus, ambulances, additional fire engines, rescue boats, power lifts, and radios. And some of those, I know Dave has mentioned, they are going to be applying for some grants, and so some of it's taking advantage of that. But a lot of these equipment purchases would be through the capital reserves, and would be things I think that would make a meaningful impact to the people performing those jobs sooner rather than later. So again, if there's questions specifically related to those, we have each of the representatives here to answer that, but that's kind of what that captures. The next item, the Emergency Operations Center facility upgrades. That's essentially to run the command center and Tom Brown's office and things that they take care of whenever these types of situations, whether it's a pandemic or weather related, to do some facility upgrades. So that's what that item is. It's $50,000. Each of these items is essentially broken down to millions. So 1.6 represents 1.6 million. Under the negative economic impact, one program Susan Grimes came up with is a business and entrepreneurial support program, $175,000. That's for technical support and job training to get those resources available. I think hold some events to support those efforts. One of the big ones that I think as a committee we are excited about, the possibility, is a community investment grant program. We were looking at $5 million there. That would be a one-to-one matching grant for assistance for impacted businesses. In this case, impacted businesses are kind of defined as tourism, hospitality, travel, leisure, those kind of things almost automatically applied. If there was a business outside of that and they could show they meet the requirements, they would be eligible as well to do some projects, some business support. Another item that I think is going to be important, and you were here this morning hearing from Horizon Goodwill about housing, so it could go to support affordable housing initiatives, as well as some outdoor and neighborhood improvements. In terms of how the program defines these, there is kind of an income threshold for what they look at. It's around, I believe, $60,000 and below for the types of targeted areas and people that they're looking to support if you're not automatically in one of those defined businesses that I mentioned, hospitality, the travel, the leisure areas. The other one, we received a request for $500,000 from the Convention and Visitors Bureau to support tourism-related recovery, and they have prepared how they plan to use that money. I think overall, in terms of that area, receipts based on income tax were down about 20%, and so they were looking at using those funds to support marketing efforts and revamping some things that they're doing to support tourism recovery in Washington County. The next category, services to disproportionately impacted communities. Another, I think, really beneficial one that really, if you're looking at moving forward, the types of requests that we received this morning for supporting the homeless population would fit right into there. This would be a program, $1.5 million, to support nonprofits addressing the impact of pandemic on vulnerable populations. So in this case, disproportionately impacted communities has a income threshold, in this case around $40,000 and under, as well as goes by qualified census tracts, which automatically fall into that. So those areas would be kind of the core of Hagerstown and the western and southern areas kind of automatically fit into that bill, where you can do projects in those areas that benefit those populations. The next one is a capital project that the county has that we would look to put some additional funds to do a project really beyond what we'd otherwise be capable of doing. The county owns the Martin Luther King building a couple blocks away from here in the Jonathan Street area neighborhood. And it would renovate that 75-year-old gym. It's currently, the building is used by Head Start, which is another very beneficial organization that serves that community. And so they are in need of some upgrades there for the facility that are long overdue. The Robert Johnson Community Center uses the facility 3 days a week. And so to renovate that gym and make it available as a community recreational facility where the county and its rec department would have that available to the public in that community, I think would be a big asset and fits within the criteria and intents of the ARPA funds. Moving on to infrastructure, this is a little bit more clear cut in terms of what's eligible. The county has a number of projects, and Mark Bradshaw here is able to talk about them a bit further. And some of these were already mentioned today. The capacity management project, we would put some funds towards that, which largely I think would be to capture some of the additional cost increases and things to make sure that doesn't fall back on the county or the ratepayers. The Smithsburg wastewater treatment plant would be another one. Lastly, a project that was considered that could be eligible, but we brought it to your attention, but are not necessarily recommending these funds go towards it, are some improvements to the Fort Ritchie sewer line. We were recommending that those funds be taken from the proceeds of the sale. But again, that's a project that's ongoing that could be eligible to use these if we desired. On the water side, there's $500,000 for Sharpsburg water meter replacement, and I believe Mark's looking to also leverage some state funds that would be available there, and $300,000 to go towards supporting the development of the Sharpsburg well. And Commissioner Klein, you mentioned the Boonsboro drinking water. That's on there at $1 million for the reservoir repairs, and as a committee, it could go under either, but we kind of thought it would fit under the CIP reserves as kind of a one-time thing. Also to kind of make it clear, because as a reminder, Washington County is going through this process, but each of the municipalities and City of Hagerstown is also receiving ARPA funds and have those at their disposal as well. And then lastly, under that category, $1 million to support our stormwater management program for non-point source water treatment. That's directly related to our MS4 municipal stormwater permit and requirements that we have to achieve to remain compliant. The column prior approved is more or less a summary of what's already been spent. That captures the premium pay, broadband expansion, IT equipment. Moving on to miscellaneous, one project that was discussed at several levels, including the boards at the Ag Center and the Parks and Recreation, was to construct a facility at the Agriculture Education Center, a large multi-purpose indoor facility that would allow for flexible use for emergency response needs. You know, when the pandemic hit, one of the first things was finding available space. The Ag Center was looked at, but ultimately the state chose to rent the facility at the premium outlets. And that worked well for the time being. Storage of equipment and things like that, whether it's a pandemic or just a natural disaster, it's important to have those assets at our disposal. So it would potentially fill that need as a shelter requirement, emergency response. In addition, on a regular basis, support the Ag Center for special events, particularly in the wintertime. Things are a bit limited and there's limited large space available. It would support tourism and recreation as well throughout the year. So that was a project that came up, and you'll see as well on the CIP side as far as presentation. And they're recommending as well a contracted employee grant manager that would be outside of the county to help with the reporting compliance and making sure we're following all the guidelines and eligibility for the program. And then lastly, if we do everything that we show here, that leaves $672,000 in unallocated balance of ARPA funds, and I believe about $700,000 in CIP reserves. So that's a lot that we just went through, but it's a lot of information, and we did want to provide you an opportunity to hear where the ARPA committee was at, as well as some things we talked about, and get some feedback on those. So the last thing I would just want to talk about before we jump into some questions is the whole, how do we fund things? What, are we getting the second round? What can we do now? Is looking at these projects. So you can go to the next slide. And potentially, what things would we want to appropriate now versus wait to the second round? And so they're listed on your screen. Some of those are where we felt the needs were to get started. So certainly want to support those businesses that are impacted. While you see up there, the business and entrepreneurial support, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the nonprofit assistance, as well as some projects just are further along in the time frame, like the sewer capacity management project. Be helpful to have a decision, because I believe, Kelsey, you have bonds and things you're trying to line up as far as what the funding outlook's going to be. And then round two is more or less everything else. So we're not here to necessarily need a commitment, but in terms of trying to structure, it is important to know what things we would look to start sooner rather than later. And potentially, if we're uncertain about what the funding allocation is going to be, even moving forward, you could make a decision just to go ahead and allocate funds to things that are basically available to be funded now in round one, and come back and look later at round two when the money is received in June.
Andrew, that community investment grant program, explain, would that be us basically being the grant givers and 50-50 match with other businesses has been impacted? Is that pretty much a summary?
I believe so. That would be intended, the community investment grant program would be run through Susan Grimes' office. And so in terms of a little bit more information, I think she had the grants ranging from 20 to 250,000.
Gotcha.
In that range. Now, that's all open to interpretation, and she maybe would be a better person to answer some questions about the need that she's heard, because she's gone through several rounds of assistance to
I guess what I'm getting at,
businesses.
if it's a match and they come up with half and they can help, that's sort of important if it's what a way I understand it, because the businesses have been impacted in the last 2 years. So that's why you have that on your priority list, I would guess.
Yeah, and it's an eligible category, and we're trying to make sure we address those concerns. And back to the match, maybe one question that you have or has come up is, if the county is saying we want to match and the business is located in municipality, could the municipality come up with the other 50%? I think as a committee, we said, well, that would potentially meet the intent if they're willing to participate. I think, I don't know, John, you want to add in, but that's some of what we talked about is, yes, as a county, we have these funds, municipalities have some, so what are some things that we can work together on?
Yeah.
So Andrew, I came to you with the idea of trying to help Jonathan Street with that swimming pool up
Yes.
there. Would that fall under that 2.4 million community investment grant?
Yes. I mean, in total, it's 5. It's just we had to split it up, so potentially on that sheet,
Yeah.
it would be 2.4 million. And so the answer would be, if the county says, we'll put up 50% because it's a match, we want you to come up with the rest. So whether it's their own fundraising, or as a group, do we decide that we'll be open to, if they get the other 50% from the city? I just think it's important that we try to stretch every dollar that we can, so that it's not just they come to us, we give them 100%, when, yeah, the city could participate, it's a project in the city.
Right.
How do we work together?
Who's managing that?
At this point, I think it was through Susan Grimes' office as more of a community investment program, but some of those things overlap with Susan Buchanan, so not to put her on the spot, but I think there's going to be some lifting on her end and her office as well.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that's what we thought. I mean, obviously, again, both of those departments have been involved with grants throughout this whole process. So we'd have to work out all those details, but it would be handled internally by one or both of those departments. So, and I'll just say, just what you said earlier about, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ARPA money floating around. The state, municipalities, they have them. I think Boonsboro, for example, I mean, I think they were committing to use at least, a majority of their ARPA funds to help with their project that this board agreed to help with. And, you know, it's just like, and Antietam broadband too. I mean, the state came up with this program, the state and federal government came up with the program. We kicked in money too. So it's always been our thought is, you know, we want to set up these programs so we can, and as you said, so we can leverage the other money that's out there. And we want, you know, and again, it's things that we probably wouldn't be able to do if with everything else being equal, and we tried to hit the different areas that has been identified as important to this board.
I don't know what it's worth, but when I came to you to talk to you about this, I know since I've been on, there's been a lot of talk about how we're going to spend this money, where is it going to go, and you know, after I left your office, I just think it was an excellent way to do this. I think it's well thought out, and I just think it's a really good program y'all set up here to use these funds.
Very good.
Andrew, can we see that or Danielle, that last slide again? The last slide, I wanted to, yeah. There you, no, the one with priorities, stage 1 and 2.
Round 1, round 2.
Yeah.
I think it's the one after that. Yes, that one.
Yep.
And that was a consensus of, again, I agree with Commissioner Burkett that you guys, it's a great team that brainstormed this. So, so you all had a consensus of what would be RD1 and RD2. Is that how that went down, or did?
I mean, full disclosure, I put the projects in the categories there, talked with John and Kelsey. I think some of round 2, you look at it, some of those are capital projects. And so, you know, if there's an understanding that there'll be funding going towards them, waiting till June or July when it's available wouldn't be the end.
No, I mean, like your EMS, it's sort of priority, but you could fund that, you could put that in July or June.
Correct, the round 2.
Or even, since we're proposing using the capital reserves for that, if you decide you want to fund it sooner out of the reserves, you have that ability.
Yes, and that's what the note at the bottom says, projects proposing using CIP reserves could be allocated now.
I think Danny's suggestion I was had, get with everybody. I mean, who am I to question that when you had all those brilliant minds? But I think my suggestion would be, how long is it going to take to implement any of those RD2, and how soon do we need them? Just an order of urgency, maybe, priority plus urgency.
Well, I think they're kind of structured that way now. I mean, the projects that are in the second round, the grant programs, the community investment program, and the nonprofit assistance were something that the Susans kind of came up with, that they'll have to publish some guidelines for how people apply to it. But really, aside from those, you're talking about Dave Hayes and Emergency Management, their purchases, they're good with Rick to process those. The ones in RD2 are kind of capital projects, and so a lot of the water sewer ones, they're already underway. The Ag Center would be the only one that we've done some planning level efforts and started with the health department about what that would be, that I would need to get up and running. But it's more if we know that there's a commitment, there's not necessarily a need to have that money now. We can wait several months. And as far as splitting up the community investment, that was just kind of the last one to make the numbers work. So, you know, would they spend $2.4 million in the next few months by the time we get to July? You know, perhaps, but I think we'll just have to see how fast something gets out on the street, what type of applications you use, and how fast they actually start spending and using the money, if that's going to be, you know, sufficient.
Yeah, I'm fine with y'all's judgment, I guess, here, the rest of the commissioners.
You're just looking for consensus, move forward, correct?
I mean, John, what do you think?
Just round 1 or both round 1 and 2?
Well, I mean, obviously, we have the money for round 1, although if it's coming out of capital reserves, I mean, I think you could approve it all today, you could approve round 1, you could approve part of it. I mean, obviously, if you approve it, so we know where we're going with this, then we can, you know, anything that's in the capital reserves, we can start the process with those, because we have that money, this board set that money aside. And the programs, again, have to, as Andrew said, they have to be developed, so it's not gonna happen tomorrow. So once we get the approval of the board to move forward, we can start that process about putting those, and we can obviously keep you up to date on that. So, I mean, I think, I think a motion probably would be necessary, because what we're gonna do is allocate these funds, not just ARPA funds, but capital reserve funds.
Right, and using funds out of the Cascade Fund from the sale to fund the sewer line.
All right, so I think you're gonna need a
That's
motion
something
to
I think
do all
Mark
that.
is getting bids on now, that we would want to move forward with that as soon as possible.
What would be the opinion of the committee if we just approved round one and then come back and approve round two? I mean, I'm sort of proceeding with caution, that's all. I don't see the money in the bank yet, that's,
Mr. Hayes, do you have a comment?
So, I can speak to the emergency services stuff there, and I'll give you two examples. The boats, the rescue boats, were 37 weeks getting motors, so if we were to wait till, say, July or June, we would be almost done with the season. The actual apparatus, the engines and ambulances, are just about a year delivered, so.
Yeah, with that information, maybe it's gonna be that much, you think about that supply chain, Dave's probably right. Everything we do is gonna be delayed because of, even materials for projects are gonna be forever.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think if there's a commitment to go forward with this slate, it'll get worked out. I mean, to Dave's point, a lot of the emergency service apparatus would actually be capital reserve funding. I believe there's only one, which is the air packs, which were ARPA funds. So there's still a process to go through the purchasing route. And at some point, when you actually encumber the funds and need that commitment. So
I don't see the federal government reneging on this. And so I don't have a problem approving the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially with the EMS equipment in there that's coming out of, I make a motion that we approve round one and round two of this
Okay, is there a
proposal.
second to that motion?
I'd second it.
First and second, is any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioners, and thanks to the committee. I spent a lot of time doing it, and now the work's just begun for some of us, but.
Yeah, get busy.
Thank you very much. I think it's a great way to spend this money, and.
Yes, indeed.
So thank you very much, Commissioners, and thanks for the committee.
All right. Next on the agenda is closed session. Need a motion?
Motion closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Off the air we go. Thank you, everyone.